I want to back up a little bit and talk about demand for apartment buildings, right? We are a renter nation. There's no doubt about that. This chart shows younger people aged 20 to 34, and it shows how most of these people have a propensity to rent. Most people in the age group want to rent because of several reasons. Either they want to be closer to downtown amenities, or they want more space, or they simply can't afford a house. And so, there's a lot that comes behind that. You have to save up for a down payment. You have to have good credit. You have to want to buy a house and be, quote unquote, tied down in a private residence for a couple of years at least. And most people are deciding not to do that. In addition to that, there's less education out there about how to even buy a house. So people are just defaulting to going to apartment buildings and staying in rental units for much of their lives. And what this chart isn't showing is the increase in baby boomers who are getting older and they're selling their houses. And when they're selling their houses, they're moving into rental situations because they're looking for someone to either take care of them or move closer to a hospital or move closer to areas where they can shop without having a car. There's a lot of things that are a bonus when you have multifamily closer to downtown areas and other shopping centers. So those are things that most people that are Gen Z, millennials, and older baby boomers are looking for in a rental situation. And we're seeing that trend continue, which is great for us as investors. Also, multifamily construction, even though this chart is a little bit old, it's showing that multifamily housing starts are starting to trickle off a little bit. And that is also the case, especially now, given where we are with COVID. But that's great because usually new housing construction is for type A construction or luxury construction. And when you don't have those units being built, that means that there's more demand for some of the lower and older properties that are built in the 80s and 90s, which are the assets that we tend to look for at Elevate Equity, those B and C class asset properties. So when you have less construction, then it means that there's more demand for those types of units. And when there is more construction, it just means that there's more demand overall and that people are seeking some of those luxury units. But either way, we see that the B and C asset class is a perfect place, no matter where multifamily housing is. So we're really, really bullish on that. And we're going to continue to be looking for those types of properties in the near future. And as I was alluding to before, the gap is widening between a home mortgage and home payments versus paying rent. That's really important because as that trend continues, that helps incentivize lots and lots of people to become renters and maybe even stay renters. It's unfortunate that some renters are getting further and further behind and not being able to save up for a house. But while they do, and if they're able to, most of them are looking for rental situations in order to keep them up on their feet and give them a safe, comfortable place to live. And that's where we will be able to provide that service to them. Now, the benefits of investing with Elevate Equity in particular are we look to provide anywhere between 7 to 8% as a minimum per year on average for cash flow. We offer higher returns than most traditional investments because not only is there the 7 to 8% per year on average cash flow, we get amazing tax benefits that come with owning real estate, such as depreciation. We like to consistently communicate with our partners and make sure that everything is crystal clear. We want to make sure that everything is fully transparent and that we're always reachable to you. Once we purchase a property, we are so focused on being able to communicate what it is exactly that's happening at the property on a monthly basis on optional Zoom webinars and Zoom video calls for the investors in case they have any questions. And in addition to that, we have a place on Google Drive where all of our documentation, everything from the P&L to the rent roll to maintenance records, anything that you need will be available on that Google Drive and is accessible at any time. We are 100% SEC compliant. That is very important these days to make sure that we're complying with all the regulations. And we make sure that any community that we undertake is going to have pride of ownership. We want to make sure that everyone is happy, not only the investors and the owners, but we also want to make the residents, the property managers, the maintenance staff, everyone involved in our day-to-day operations, we want them to be very happy and satisfied with the property itself. Now, why apartment buildings? Well, historical stability can't be found in any other asset class. That's what we talked about before. The demand is just incredible, and it's so recession resistant because when people are facing hard times, most people end up not being able to pay their mortgage, and they find themselves in a rental situation in a place that is maybe a little bit more meager than they used to be. So we think that apartment buildings is very strong. And of course, as we talked about before, there's increasing demand in two types of categories: renters by choice and those that are forced to become renters. So both of those demographics are increasing, and we're perfectly positioned to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. Depreciation, we talked about that a little bit more. Depreciation allows investors, such as yourself, to be able to write off a part of the value of the building that you've bought as if it's being used up. So it's some sort of phantom credit that the government gives you. It's almost like you could consider it an expense because the building is getting used up out of its useful life. Something that you can do in apartment buildings that you can't do with single family homes is called cost segregation. In cost segregation, an engineer comes and counts up all of the beams, all the bricks, all of the appliances, all of the carpeting, the lighting, all of the components of the building, and adds them up and converts the building itself from a real asset in terms of real estate into personal property. And once it's personal property, the timeline in which you can depreciate the property compresses, because in a normal building, in a normal house, you have 27 and a half years. So the whole value is stretched out. You can depreciate the entire building over 27 and a half year period, which normally means you do straight line depreciation. So every year you can take 1/27th of the building every single year on your taxes. But in terms of an apartment building, you can depreciate it in a 5 to 7 to 12 year period because you're converting the real estate itself from 27 and a half years into actual material, which has a useful life that can be quantified and that can be depreciated quicker. In addition to that, you can use real estate to help get you in a place where you pay no capital gains tax on the particular property that you're buying. You do defer it. So every property that you buy, you can defer your capital gains by selling and then deferring and deferring and deferring. And using a 1031 exchange is a perfect way to do that. There are ways to do this with multifamily, but generally we advise that people get started with the entity that they want to start deferring capital gains in the first syndication, and then it's easier to move that 1031 exchange piece into the next syndication as needed. And then, of course, because it's an LLC, usually it'll be 15% tax liability on the cash flows that are coming in. That's with accelerated depreciation. Your spendable cash flow is subject to the 15%, but usually the deductions allow for the offset. So you end up getting almost no tax burden during the hold or the life of the investment. Another thing that's important to note is that you can use retirement funds as well to deploy into and purchase real estate, whether it's multifamily or if you want to buy single family houses as well.